It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
Thank you very much for listening. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. You can find me on the socials at Dan Mandis Show. I'm on Facebook and Twitter as well. Let's see here. People are sliding into my DMs, and they're sending me questions. Rachel says that, do you think the Democrats will stay home where the main Democrats are not standing with Joe Biden? So in other words, if Joe Biden is the main candidate and they don't kick him out, then will the Democrats stay home? Because that's part of the dynamic today. And I've been telling you about how there's apparently 25 members of the House of Representatives, Democrats, who are going to call for Joe Biden to stay home. So it's almost like the Democrats, there's a number of things going on. Number one is if Biden is the main candidate and they keep him, or if he chooses not to step down, the question then would be, how does that impact the down ballot races? Because if people are not excited about Joe Biden, then the Democrats may stay home. Well, I don't see Kamala Harris exciting anyone either. But as far as if Joe Biden is ultimately steps down, is the person the Democrats would put in place, is it going to be Kamala Harris or will it be someone else? We'll have to wait and see what happens. I think that for the Democrats, whether it is Kamala Harris or whether it is Joe Biden, whoever it may be, they're not going to be excited about unless that person is Michelle Obama. There's a new poll out there that shows that Michelle Obama is the only possible candidate that would soundly beat Donald Trump. There's a survey out that said that Michelle Obama would beat Donald Trump 50 to 39%. Of course, the problem is Michelle Obama has said ad nauseum that she has no interest in running. But of all the candidates that are on the left, she's the only one that actually would beat Donald Trump. So I don't know if the Democrats would stay home if Joe Biden was the candidate for the presidency, running for re-election, or if they kicked him off. Would that mean that the Democrats would stay home? I don't know. They say that most Democrats out there, the polling is out there that shows that most Democrats believe that Joe Biden should not be at the top of the ticket. So does that mean that they would stay home? I don't know what the answer to that question is, because I think that there is a certain contingent of Democrats out there that absolutely hate Donald Trump enough that they don't care who's at the top of the ticket. They're not voting for the Democrat presidential candidate. They're voting against Donald Trump. There's a lot of folks out there that talk about that. That's number one. Number two, a guy called up a few minutes ago, and right at the end of the last hour, and I hate when this happens, because he threw down some sort of a theory that Barack Obama could somehow become the vice president. And then he would, if Biden steps aside or whatever happens, then Obama, because he wasn't elected, he was appointed, could then be the president again for a third term. And I had not heard of that theory before. So I did some Googling because I mean, basically, I don't believe that it's possible. Here's what I read. The 12th Amendment reads like this: no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible for that of the vice president of the United States. Since the former president would not be eligible to run for president, he is almost certainly barred from running for a vice president. But then, of course, as soon as I read that, I saw some other websites, which I'm going to be honest with you, I'd never heard of before. But there are theories out there that say that Barack Obama could become the vice president and then somehow could ascend to the presidency. I don't think so. That's number one. But again, there's going to be always people out there that will say that this is possible and that's possible. I'm not going to say that people are conspiracy theorists, not by any stretch of the imagination. I've always called conspiracy theorists just those that see the truth before anyone else. However, in the case of Obama becoming Barack Obama becoming the vice president and then ascending to the presidency, I just don't see it. And by the way, Obama has said ad nauseum that he doesn't want to be in the White House. He has said that over and over again. Michelle Obama has said that too. So, in the same monologue where I'm telling you that Michelle Obama is the only candidate, according to some polling, that shows that she would be able to soundly beat Donald Trump, she's not interested in running. But you and I both know, friends, that all she would have to do is say, you know what? America is in a really dark place. And we need to protect our democracy. And the American people have spoken. And poll after poll after poll shows that the American people want me to run. And who am I, Michelle Obama would say, who am I to deny the American people my presence on the campaign trail? That's all she has to do. And, for me, and I've said this a number of times now, for me, I would much rather see Joe Biden stay in office. I would much rather see Joe Biden stay in office. We'll have to see what happens. But the question is this, because the guy also mentioned that Kamala Harris was right up there with Donald Trump. And I had seen some various polling out there. This is what I found from Forbes. Kamala Harris leads major Biden alternatives in the polling. Here's how the president's top replacements are polling against Donald Trump. Vice President Kamala Harris, 45%, trailing Donald Trump by 47%, by 2 points. In a CNN SRRS poll, a smaller deficit compared to Biden's 6-point shortfall behind Donald Trump in the same poll. Which is really stunning to me. And the reason why that's stunning to me is because Kamala Harris is incredibly unpopular. The other thing that I don't know is, when was this poll taken? That's the question. Because if the poll was taken, and they don't say. Yeah, they don't say. So bottom line, though, is that Kamala Harris is incredibly unpopular. And I think that for independents and moderates with the Democrat Party, I don't think she invokes the same enthusiasm as some of these other candidates. And I certainly don't believe that anyone is enthusiastic about Joe Biden. They're not enthusiastic about Kamala Harris either. The enthusiasm is on the other side with Donald Trump. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, 42%. And she is 5 points behind Donald Trump at 47%. Gavin Newsom is at 43%. Of course, you all know that he has commonly been floated as a Biden replacement, despite turning down rumors of a shadow campaign for the White House. Well, Newsom is polling at 43% at Donald Trump's 48%. Pete Buttigieg is at 43%, trailing Donald Trump, and Trump is at 47%, so that's by 4 percentage points. Cory Booker, who a lot of people seem to like, he is only at 44%. Former presidential candidate himself, who ran against Biden in 2019, also sits 2 points behind Donald Trump at 46%, albeit they say in a poll from progressive think tank Data for Progress. J.D. Pritzker, the Illinois governor, he comes in at 43%. He has expressed support for Joe Biden after his debate performance. He is behind Donald Trump at 46%, 3 percentage points in a poll for Progress polling. And finally, Amy Klobuchar, Democrat from Minnesota, another familiar face to voters. She polls 3 points behind Donald Trump in the Data for Progress poll, with Klobuchar capturing 43% compared to Donald Trump's 46%. You know what's interesting? And maybe it's just too soon, but this Wes Moore, who is the governor of Maryland, I keep going back to him. And the reason I keep going back to him, Wes Moore, is because there's a lot of people who believe that he is the second coming of Obama, speaking of Obama. So I'm going to Google in Wes Moore versus Donald Trump and see if there's been any polling done on those two. Well, Wes Moore's come out and said, I will not seek the 2024 Democratic nomination, says Biden is not dropping out. That is what he says. But if Joe Biden does drop out, then, Moore can change his mind. USA Today had an article just today or yesterday. Can Wes Moore end Democrat panic over Joe Biden and lure black voters? I'll tell you, I think, I'm no Democrat. Trust me when I say I'm no Democrat. I do see the appeal of a Wes Moore. I do. And so now the question is because you'll notice that Wes Moore was not in any of that polling. They had a lot of the retreads. They had Amy Klobuchar. They had Cory Booker, Crying Cory, as I used to call him, Cory Booker. They had, of course, Kamala Harris and others. But they didn't have Wes Moore in there. And the point I'm making is that there's a lot of people that really like Wes Moore, and he's sort of like the shadow candidate. He is the guy that is just sort of lurking. And if you brought in a Wes Moore to go against Donald Trump, it would surprise a lot of people. But he's been making a lot of noise with these interviews, and people really like him. But I don't see in this article where there was any polling done between Wes Moore and Donald Trump. So I don't know. Maybe people don't take him all that seriously. But he's a governor. He's a governor of Maryland, a blue state, and he seems to be pretty smart. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens with Joe Biden. Where are we? I've had so many stories today that I feel like the news cycle has just been crazy today. Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi had what time is it? All right, so coming up next, I'm going to play you some audio from Nancy Pelosi. She was on CNN, and it was MSNBC with Andrea Mitchell, and she had an interview with Andrea Mitchell, and they talked about the state of the race with Joe Biden and really the state of Joe Biden. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more straight ahead. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
Most of us outdoor grillers do most everything right. We use a food thermometer to make sure we've cooked meat and poultry to a bacteria-killing temperature. We use one set of platters and utensils to handle raw meat and poultry, a different set for the cooked product. But there's still a way to mess up things, right?
Yep.
Yep. Meredith Carruthers, Agriculture Department food safety expert, says most of us mess up by not washing our hands when we should. She says in a cookout situation, we need to wash our hands immediately after each time that we've touched any raw meat or poultry products because bacteria from them will likely end up on our hands, and we can unknowingly spread it to anything we touch, other foods, doorknobs, countertops, phones.
It's crazy what your hands can move around.
Yes, and it's not like that bacteria will die immediately. In fact,
certain bacteria can live on surfaces for like 72 hours.
And can cause illness days after the cookout, illness that could produce a bit of discomfort.
But it could also be as severe as causing death.
So hand washing, very important. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE. Got some breaking news here, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Eric and Gary. Yeah, this is breaking news. Delta Airlines had to make an emergency landing at JFK in New York with medics on standby after passengers are served contaminated food during a flight from Detroit to Amsterdam. So they took out of Detroit. They're on their way to Amsterdam, and then all of a sudden they realized that they served folks contaminated food. This is interesting. They're not saying how many people were contaminated or, how many people were served the contaminated food and so forth. But it was, they say, spoiled food. wouldn't you be able to tell the food was, this is where my mind goes. Wouldn't you be able to tell if the food was spoiled? I mean, like if you serve somebody spoiled like chicken, then you can tell that that food is spoiled, can't you? I mean, I've never eaten spoiled food before. Let's see here. A Delta Airlines plane headed to Amsterdam made the emergency landing in New York. This is just about an hour and a half ago. Delta Flight 136 was traveling from Detroit, Michigan to the Netherlands when it was diverted to JFK Airport early this morning after it was discovered that a portion of the in-flight meal service had been spoiled. It is not yet known how many passengers ate the spoiled food, but medics met the plane after it landed at JFK to provide treatment for any passengers and crew members who had been affected. A Delta spokesperson telling DailyMail.com that its teams are probing the incident and have issued an apology to its customers. The plane had 277 customers on board, departed from Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County Airport just before 11 o'clock last night. The flight crew decided to divert to New York City, learning that some passengers had been served spoiled food. Delta says the crew consulted with medical experts who recommended the diversion. The flight landed safely at JFK around 4 a.m. on Wednesday, where passengers and crew were met by medics. They say it is unclear how many people have been affected by the incident. Let's see if there's anything else. That's really about it. So some breaking news there, and I'm sure that'll be on your morning show news as the morning continues to unfold. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. Okay, so I was talking about Nancy Pelosi, and I was talking about how she gave this, I'm calling this a train wrecky interview. It was a really bad interview, and it was a really bad interview for a number of different reasons. One of them is just because Nancy Pelosi was involved. And anytime Nancy Pelosi is involved in an interview, you know that it's going to be a little train wrecky. It's going to be bad. But she's, on MSNBC. She's on with Andrea Mitchell. And Joe Biden obviously comes up because the Democrats are in full-on oh crap mode. And she had been asked the question, has the Biden campaign reached out to you since the debate? And
no, I haven't spoken to him since the debate, but I have spoken to him regularly. And every time he has been on the top of his game in terms of knowing the issues and what is at stake. But we all have been in touch with people close to the president. So it's not a question of not having an opportunity to make our concerns known or have some questions answered. But I think we have to spend a little more time viewing what is at stake in this election. Right. Today is the 60th anniversary.
So she goes on for another 2 minutes trashing Republicans and trashing Donald Trump. So I want to make sure you understand what she did. She was asked a question because the Biden campaign seems to be in oh crap mode. Have they reached out to you? And she says, well, no, they haven't. But let me tell you how much Donald Trump and the Democrats suck, the Republicans suck. And she just goes on for like 2 minutes. And she went on and on and on and on. And so it was kind of funny because it was clear that Pelosi went on this interview with some sort of an agenda. And the agenda was that, and this seems to be what the Democrats are doing, basically it is acknowledge the train wreck that was Joe Biden's debate. So you have to acknowledge it, but then you've got to pivot, and you've got to pivot to start bashing Donald Trump and the Republicans, and that's what Nancy Pelosi did here. I've got a couple of more audio bites as well, because this interview, it did go off the rails, and I've got that audio for you straight ahead on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. By the way, you can follow me on the socials at Dan Mandis Show, including on Twitter. Now, a little bit ago, I tweeted out, retweeted, I guess. You guys know it's like a perpetual joke. It's like a never-ending joke. There is the now infamous or famous scene from a German-made movie called The Downfall, and it is about the last days of Hitler in Germany in World War II. And so if you're familiar with they do this on the internet where they'll do some bad lip reading. And so they'll use that scene where Hitler is in his final days, and there's a bunch of people in Hitler's office, and he's being told that his regime is over, basically. It's, again, the final days before Hitler committed suicide. And what people do is they lip sync over it and tell a different narrative. So taking the internet by storm yesterday was the Hitler scene, and basically it's the Joe Biden story, courtesy of the movie Downfall with featuring Adolf Hitler. It's hard to explain, but it is very funny. It is very funny. So if you want a good laugh this morning as we head into Independence Day, go to my Twitter feed at Dan Mandis Show, and you'll see what I mean. It is the Joe Biden's, perhaps, final days or weeks or months of the presidency, and it is bad lip syncing over the scenes from the movie Downfall about the last days of Adolf Hitler in Germany. So funny. I was openly laughing when I saw that earlier. And again, you can follow me at Dan Mandis Show. There's a couple of headlines. I was playing audio from Nancy Pelosi and this interview, this train wrecky and awkward interview of Nancy Pelosi. She was on with Andrea Mitchell over there at MSNBC. There's a couple of headlines, though, that I do want to get to as well, because there is a lot going on. Apparently, the staff, and this is believe it or not, this is a headline that's out there this morning. The staff of Joe Biden, they are freaking the blank out. And that blank starts with an F, right? They're freaking out over at the Biden administration because the staffers, they don't know what to do since the horrific debate performance. And, one of the things that I would say is I'm a little confused. Because behind the scenes, we keep hearing that Joe Biden has been a train wreck. Well, if Joe Biden has been a train wreck, then these folks should not be surprised by that debate performance. That's number one. Number two is that in Washington, D.C., it is well known that for the people that work within the Biden administration, they have known for quite some time that Joe Biden has been rapidly, his faculties have been rapidly diminishing. So that's also, this couldn't have come as a surprise for them within the debate. Now, earlier we were talking about reports coming out of the Biden camp where you have Joe Biden, and the rest of these folks. They've been basically blaming the preparers for Joe Biden for the debate, saying that he was overprepared. Well, people within the Biden administration, the Biden camp are saying, no. You're not going to blame us for this. Because he would get up. He couldn't, really work before 11 o'clock in the morning, and he always had an early night. So this had nothing to do with being overprepared. So the civil war that is the Democrat Party, it continues to wage war against, the people that want to see Biden stay in office and continue to run for the presidency for a second term. Then you have others that want to see the president step down, maybe finish out his term, but definitely not run not run for a second term. I was just telling you a few minutes ago, it was big news. It is big news. It's going to be part of the headlines all day today. So you're hearing it here first, friends, on Red Eye Radio. You've got 25 Democrat congressmen there in the House of Representatives and they are apparently going to call for Joe Biden to resign. And so that is a very big deal. And so when you've got Nancy Pelosi and she is being interviewed by Andrea Mitchell, Nancy Pelosi went on for, 2.5 minutes about how much of a threat to democracy the former president is Donald Trump. And so Andrea Mitchell, I thought, asked a really good and really relevant question. That question is, well, listen, if Donald Trump is so bad, if he is a threat to democracy, then please tell us, Nancy Pelosi, why wasn't Joe Biden more ready?
Let me dial back for a moment. Given your perspective and many Democrats' perspective of what is at stake, that it's an existential moment for the country, according to your perspective, if Donald Trump is elected. That would posit that you have to have the most important campaign led by the most important nominee. And do you have questions as to whether this was a one bad night or whether there is something more serious involved, and whether he needs to be more open about if he does have a medical condition, if he is slipping? Everybody knows there's an age issue, and he certainly did the opposite of reassuring people with that high risk, potentially high reward debate plan that they came up with. It backfired.
Yeah, obviously. So Andrea Mitchell, very nervously, I don't know if she's always like this. I don't watch MSNBC, and I'm not real familiar with Andrea Mitchell. I know that she's been around a long time. But she does get the question out, and I'm going to spare you most of Pelosi's droning on. But she did say that the question is legit, and this is what made headlines. The question is legit, and she talks a little bit about Joe Biden's mental acuity.
I think it's a legitimate question to say, is this an episode or is this a condition? And so when people ask that question, it's completely legitimate of both candidates. Because what we saw on the other side.
So then she goes on and on about Donald Trump.
I tore up his speech when he lied to the Congress.
90 seconds she goes on about Donald Trump. And, the question is about Joe Biden. It's not about Donald Trump. So the strategy of the Democrats is acknowledge the train wreck and then immediately pivot to Donald Trump.
Both candidates owe whatever test you want to put them to in terms of their mental acuity and their health. Both of them.
Well, arguably, President Biden should have been prepared for the kinds of lies that he says and that we've also reported that Donald Trump says, and all the fact-checking is that there were at least 30 lies and not answering questions and pivoting back to immigration whenever he could. So there's no question about that.
It's so interesting. Because everywhere you see the Democrats yammering on and on about Donald Trump when they're asked about Joe Biden, we keep seeing the same and hearing the same, I'm going to put this in air quotes, facts, where Donald Trump supposedly told 30 lies. Now, I don't know if Donald Trump told 30 lies. Here's what I know. What I know is that when there is a disagreement over policy or there's a disagreement over maybe some results of a Donald Trump policy. Well, if Trump has, his way of interpreting either a policy or results of a policy or the economy or whatever, and somebody else may have a different take on the same data, well, they don't call that a disagreement over policy. They'll say, well, Donald Trump is lying. That's what they'll say. Donald Trump is a perpetual liar. And they forget that Joe Biden has been lying to America for 3.5 years. I mean, that's the far bigger point is you've got all of this, I'll call it pearl clutching on the left about Donald Trump supposedly telling these 30 lies in 90 minutes. But what about Joe Biden? And what about the lies that he has been told? And these are, with Donald Trump, there's some things that the former president can say where you can say, well, I don't agree with the statement that he made about, the greatest economy ever, right? That's what Trump will sometimes say. Well, that is certainly up for debate, whether or not, the economy was good under Donald Trump. Was it the greatest economy ever? Some people would say yes. Donald Trump would say yes. Other people would say, well, no, it wasn't as good as the economy in you name the year. And it also depends on, how you define or categorize the best economy or a good economy? Is it unemployment? Is it GDP? What is it? Is it wages? Is it real wages? What is it? But the point is, there's a lot of different ways to interpret facts when it comes to things like the economy and so forth. But they'll say, oh, Donald Trump is lying again. No, that's just, his opinion is. Trump said, well, I believe it's 18 million people that have come across our southern border. Listen, whether it's 12 or whether it's 18, it is horrifying. But the Democrats will categorize that as a lie. Well, these same Democrats and these same journalists that will say that Donald Trump was lying about the number of people that came across our southern border when he said he believes it's more like 18 million as opposed to, 10, 11, 12 million, whatever. The truth of the matter is we don't know how many people have come across our southern border. We simply don't know. And so the media will categorize that as I'm air quoting here, the media will categorize that as a lie when Donald Trump is just stating his opinion. And they don't know either. Because let me tell you something, whether it's the Biden administration or the media, they are expert liars. And they've been working hand in hand, and they have been for 3.5 years. And now you got the media finally doing what they should have been doing years ago and calling into question Joe Biden's mental acuity. And now the Biden administration is pushing back on the media. Apparently, they're actually upset. Believe it or not, the Biden administration, they're actually upset with the media for covering Joe Biden the way that they are, which is asking the questions that conservatives and Republicans have been asking for years about Joe Biden's mental acuity. Does he still have what it takes to be president of the United States? Here's a little more from that interview with Andrea Mitchell and Nancy Pelosi. It does get a little awkward.
Well, arguably, President Biden should have been prepared for the kinds of lies that he says and that we've also reported that Donald Trump says, and all the fact-checking is that there were at least 30 lies and not answering questions and pivoting back to immigration whenever he could. So there's no question about that. I'm going to,
Yeah, but there's no fact-checking in real time. There's no fact-checking in real time.
The frustrating thing is Andrea Mitchell is sort of, tiptoeing around this notion that Joe Biden should have been ready. Don't apologize to Nancy Pelosi because their president wasn't ready for a debate. Why are you afraid to answer the question, great journalist Andrea Mitchell, who has been around forever? Ask the question, be aggressive, and hold Nancy Pelosi accountable.
And that's what the problem is.
No
I
argument
myself
there.
have never gone on a stage with him because that's who he is.
Let me just say, but President Biden should have been
It's not that hard, man. President Biden should have been ready, and he wasn't.
Prepared for that. And we have a little bit of a satellite delay, so I apologize for that, Madam Speaker. But at this point, there's no one who knows the donor community better than you. You're the best. You're a legendary fundraiser. There's no one who knows the convention rules better than you. So I've got to ask you, what are you hearing from your large network of people about whether he is up to it?
And, of course, she took to, bashing Donald Trump pretty much for the entirety of the answer. Didn't really answer the question. But the reality is that the major donor class of the Democrat Party, they are freaking out. I told you about that last night. I told you a little bit about that this morning as well. They are freaking out because they realize that they have wasted their money and they feel lied to. And yes, they feel deceived as well. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Eric. Now, remember, they return Sunday night, Monday morning. And I got to tell you, it's always such a pleasure to fill in here on the mighty Red Eye Radio. You can always find me on the socials at Dan Mandis Show. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter as well. If you'd give me a follow, I would really appreciate it. I do host a morning show here in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 at WTN. You can find us on the website, 997WTN.com. You can stream. I'm on 6 to 10 Eastern time, so here in just a few minutes. Have a great Independence Day weekend. Again, appreciate you listening. Appreciate, of course, all you veterans out there as well. Thank you for your service, and we'll talk to you again soon here on Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.